Welcome to another edition of Inspired Stories, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes, how they've overcome adversity, and explore current challenges they're facing.
Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Krista Tan. Krista is the co-founder of Talent Collective, a member community dedicated to empowering, advancing, and connecting women in talent acquisition. They also provide recruiting services as well, which includes transforming startups into employers of choice by refining their recruiting operations strategy. They help companies solve recruiting challenges during times of high growth, deflations, or turnover. They can even incorporate fractional heads of talent and advisory services. Krista has over 15 years experience in people operations, talent acquisition, and business strategy experience. She was formerly the head of Premier Talent Partners, who was named one of America's best recruiting firms. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our proprietary programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. Now, back to our guest today, Krista Tan. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to get to know you a little and speak with your audience as well.
Terrific. So let's start with kind of the origin story of Talent Collective. How did the idea for this come about?
Sure. So a little over a year and a half ago, myself and my two other co-founders and I had all gotten together. We've all been in the recruiting field for over 15 years each. And as good recruiters do, we were getting together and having a glass of wine with each other and really just chatting about the market and specifically the talent acquisition market, with so many layoffs that had happened over the last couple of years. A lot of people in our industry that have kind of just been in crisis mode, right? Like, what is the future of recruiting? What is the future of talent acquisition? There's AI spooking, I think, every industry out there, and talent acquisition is definitely included in that. So a lot of people wondering, what is the future of my job? Is AI going to take my position? So we wanted to help in some way. And so the three of us started brainstorming ways that we could give back to our community and build a place where women could come together and have a safe space to share about their personal lives, professional lives, really connect with each other. I think also after COVID, there's a really big desire for people to connect on a very personal level because we're all on Zoom all day and have been locked up in our houses for years now. So that was one piece. And then the professional development piece was another thing that we talked a lot about. Just how isolating sometimes, if you're working from home, being home all day can be, not really having a lot of people to share basically like where's recruiting going and what are the innovative tools out there, and just finding out like where things are headed, really. So we wanted to provide a place where we could bring in industry experts. We can bring in thought leaders in the space to help our members grow professionally. So that's how we got started. And we did a big launch party in San Francisco. It went extremely well. We realized within a month that we really had something special. And we had women coming to us, getting referred to us, that were saying, why didn't you do this sooner? I've been looking for something like this. And again, really, it just came out of something that we wanted for ourselves, and we wanted to be able to give back.
Cool. A couple of things I want to unpack there, Krista. First, what specifically about AI are people in your field concerned about? What is it doing that threatens or potentially threatens people's livelihood?
Sure. There's a lot of pieces of the recruiting life cycle that can be automated, and we're learning more and more what those could be. So it could be, sourcing. So sourcing candidates, finding candidates for the job that you're recruiting on. Those are some of the things that AI is really impacting. So there's a thing called Boolean search strings when back in the olden days, recruiters would have to learn how to create these threads of search strings to go find the candidates that they're looking for. Now, AI and technology can do a lot of that for you. There's also transcribing interview notes. So when you're on interviews with candidates, there are tools out there now that can transcribe those, but then also generate, a bio based on those interview notes for, let's say, to send to a hiring manager. I've been hearing a lot about tools that will actually screen candidates for you. So that really does, I think, in a lot of recruiters' minds, replace the recruiter. However, the tools that I've heard of that do this, it's on a very surface level, right? Like there's always going to be a need for the human touch and for humans to get involved in recruiting. But there are tools out there that will do kind of a high level screen. So, if you're recruiting volume, right? Like if you have 50 hires to make customer service reps or retail people and you have 3,000 applications, you could screen all of those people to get your top 100, let's say. So, and then you come in as a human and, do the rest from there. So, there's a lot of different ways. Scheduling is another big one within the recruiting life cycle that is tedious and cumbersome, and AI is helping with that as well. So a few others, but those are some of the ways.
Now, is the concern that your clients who have been paying for your services are now going to discover these AI tools and want to take this back in-house? Because it seems like if these are tools that recruiters could learn to use and incorporate into their process, it could make them more efficient, open them up to more client possibilities. But maybe there's a flip side of that where now, because of some of the software tools, people are discounting the value of the human touch of your services. Is that kind of what's playing out?
Yes, all of those things and more. So, for example, if you're an internal recruiter and you work for, a company, let's say, and you used to have a team of 5 recruiters. Now you maybe have a team of 2 recruiters because 3 of them have been laid off, and you're expected to do a lot more, right? Because you have a lot more tools and technology at your disposal. So that's where I think some of the fear comes in, that like those 3 jobs are not going to get replaced because now technology has come in and is doing a lot of the work. So there's many different facets to it, but I think you nailed definitely a big part of it. And then also just replacing the human in actual job positions.
Yeah. It's a big question that a lot of people are discussing across many industries right now. And I don't know that anybody has an answer to it. Right. I'm curious, though. I want to focus on the launch party because coming out of the gate, it sounds like you guys had a great kickoff. What did you do? How did you promote yourselves? How did you get people to that first party?
Sure. So we did a lot of, well, we're lucky. So LinkedIn is a big place that recruiters congregate, right? So our ideal customer profile, so to speak, is already on LinkedIn. So we used a lot of LinkedIn, posts and advertisement and one-to-one outreach to not only our own networks, but also doing a lot of cold outreach. There's AI tools out there now as well that will do like automated LinkedIn messaging. So you can reach a lot more people than just doing one-to-one-to-one. So we did all of those things. So definitely the warm, there's 3 co-founders. So all of us have networks of people that we've either recruited with or just other recruiters that we've known, or heads of talent, heads of people. So doing a lot of one-to-one outreach, but then also, as I mentioned, LinkedIn posts and people resharing our content, resharing the invite. We asked a lot of those people to share with their networks. So I think a lot of people were excited about this new community coming in and would reshare it and invite, the women in their network that they were excited to be at an event with.
And so you guys are located personally, physically, just outside of the San Francisco Bay Area, right?
Yes.
So this launch party, I'm going to guess, were people who were local to the Bay Area for the most part.
For the most part, and surprisingly, there were actually a couple of people. One woman had flown down from Oregon, and then there was another woman who is actually from the Midwest and runs a recruiting agency out there, but happened to be in town and caught wind of it. So she was there. She's actually an advisor for us now. So there were a few people that were not from the Bay Area that attended, but mostly they are Bay Area people.
And so going forward, is the membership look mostly like people from the Bay Area, or are there benefits and advantages for people outside of there who can't come to the in-person events that you have?
Absolutely, yes. So we've actually, in just the last year, we've launched in 10 different locations around the US and Canada. So, and another to come soon in Atlanta. So we have 10 different locations where we have physical events on a very regular basis. So that's every 4 to 6 weeks. And then really a majority of the membership and what we do for the community is online and virtual. So we do a lot of virtual workshops and webinars. We have a mentorship program where women can connect with each other virtually, of course. And we have peer groups that meet on a monthly basis. So kind of like niche groups within the recruiting field that come together and discuss topics that are specific to them. We have a couple job boards online. We have a toolbox online as well for different resources and whatnot. So any woman across the US and really globally, actually our members are global, can join and will get value out of the membership regardless of if they're in a physical location of where we are right now.
And so to take part in these benefits, you do need to subscribe, pay some kind of a membership fee, correct?
Yes, that's right. We have 3 different tiers. We kind of have like an entry into the community. We have one that's a mid-tier that really is a majority of the value that you're going to get. And then we also have a tier for executives specifically. So heads of talent, directors, VPs, and they have a couple of special perks that they get in addition to, everything else that the mid-level one would get.
Yeah. So most of your members, why do you think they're joining? What is it that they're seeking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that goes back to really like our 2 main goals with the community, which were providing a space for women to connect and network. And we're big on not just networking, just for networking's sake, but to actually build long-term relationships. So some women feel very isolated or, just that they really want to connect with other women in the space and be able to, share war stories and share what's going on with them and get best practices and tips and whatnot. And then there's also a lot of women that are here for the professional development piece, right? They might not have a big team around them or a company that has training resources or, other ways of keeping them on the cutting edge of what's going on in talent acquisition. So they join for continuous education and growth opportunities.
And so in your industry, is there like a licensure, like is continuing ed required, or it's optional? It's just for personal growth. Hey, I want to level up in what I'm doing.
Yeah, great question. There's actually not a licensure or certification at this point in recruiting. In the broader HR field, there is, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to start Talent Collective, is because talent is typically seen as a subset of HR, but we really believe that talent acquisition is its own function and we should have more. Again, like a certification or something in place to be able to make sure that people that are practitioners are actually, really quality. So that's something long term that we could see ourselves getting into and really investing in is some kind of certification or licensing or something like that. But that's like a very, very, very long term goal of ours.
What are some more of the short term to midterm goals for Talent Collective?
Sure. So we're really focused on growth now. So right now we have over 450 global members, which we feel very fortunate to have grown to this mark, just in a year. However, we know that we can reach more women and provide, value and impact in more women's lives. So we will be launching in new locations in the next year, and I'm sure, after that as well. And then a really big priority for me is to not dilute the value that people do get from the membership. So we don't want to grow at all costs. We want to remain, very competitive in the value that we're giving to our members. So one of my main goals is to really make sure that the programming we're providing is really giving our members impact and helping them with the day-to-day of their job or the connections they're getting, helping to grow their business, et cetera.
And so how do you think about, or how do you structure that growth? I mean, I think you said you're in 10 different locations already and there are more on the way. Do you have to sort of anoint somebody as kind of a local chapter president? Is that how it works?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we discovered very early on that tapping someone on the shoulder is not the best route because then that person, they may or may not organically have the passion to hold events, right? Holding an event and planning an event requires, I think, one, a very specific type of person, but then also a lot of initiative. Like this person is going to be in that location without us there nudging them along. So how we've instead grown is as we have new members join from any location, oftentimes a woman will raise their hand and say, I really want these, events in my area. So how can we do that? And that's when we start a conversation with them. They've already raised their hand. Oftentimes they'll either go at it alone and really be, that lead point person. And then other times they'll want a partner in crime. So they'll go find, maybe a friend of theirs that is also interested and they'll partner up. But we really help them do the big launch. And we'll fly out to that location, do a big launch party similar to what we did in San Francisco. Help get sponsors there, and really kind of teach them how to launch that location and teach them how to run events. And then, then they kind of are able to, they know how to plan events from there. And then we still provide support. So we help them market those events. We help get people there. We provide back end, all the tools and resources that they'll need to run events, et cetera. And they can be really small events. Like it could be just like meeting up for coffee, once a month or something like that. It doesn't have to be a huge lift on their part.
Do members have a way to sort of trial the value of the membership? Is there some way for them to kind of dip their toe in the water and test it out?
Yes, they sure do. So we do have of that middle tier membership. We have a free 30-day trial. So they can get in there, see what kind of programming is there, see what kind of groups are there. And that way they can really know and understand, how much they're going to get out of the community before committing.
I'm curious, because your organization is specifically for women in this field, does the field of talent acquisition tend to attract more women than men?
So yes, it does. However, what we tend to see is as you get more and more senior positions in the talent acquisition space, there's more men at the top. And so, let's just say theoretically there's 60% women in TA in the US and 40% males. I would say, and this is anecdotal, but that number is probably flipped at the upper level. So, director level, C level, and, VP, that a lot of the men are the ones that are getting promotions. And so that is, you kind of nailed it. That's another reason we started this, was really to empower women and help them get those opportunities to get promoted. And how do you position yourself, and how do you speak for yourself and advocate for yourself, to really, continue to grow your career if that's something that you want to do.
Mm. And so most of your members, are they like solopreneurs, maybe just like, 2 or 3 people in their firm? Do you kind of have a wide range? What's it look like?
We have a pretty wide range. So we have people that are internal, so internal recruiters, and then we have agency folks. And I would say it's probably split like pretty 50-50. And then within the firm side or agency side, a lot of people recently in the last year or two have started their own agency or their own business because of the way the market has been. Maybe they've been laid off 3 times in the last year and they can't really rely on a full-time job to feed their family or to pay the bills. So they've started their own recruiting company and are, maybe piecing together a few clients to make, one full-time income, so to speak. So a lot of the women in our community, that's a huge value add for them, that they now have other women who have recently gone through the same thing, starting their own business, and they can share all of those best practices and tools they're using, what's working well, what's not, and really help support each other. And even sharing clients, like, you might have a client reach out to you and it's a job that you've never really recruited for, but you don't want to turn away the business. And so you partner with another solo recruiter in our community to help recruit on that role. And then you both win from it. So we have, again, agency, internal, and then everything really in between.
Yeah. I'm curious, how are most people finding you? Are you doing like outbound marketing? Is it mostly word of mouth? What's that look like?
We're doing everything you mentioned and more. So we're on social media. We do a lot of thought leadership. So writing our own blogs, but then also partnering with other companies and, co-writing blogs. So again, a lot on LinkedIn. We share a lot of our content and our events, which are a huge draw on LinkedIn and our other social media channels, mostly just Instagram right now, but I could see us, having like a TikTok at some point, maybe even Facebook. But we also do cold emails. So we have kind of a sales engine running in the background where we do cold emails out to women in the talent acquisition space. We also do one-to-one outreach on LinkedIn, and those are just messages, connection requests, and then kind of inviting them to maybe an event we have coming up, those types of things, and then a ton of word of mouth. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I'm on a call with a new member or prospective member, and I ask them, how did you hear about us? And they're like, oh, like 3 people told me about you. And, so that's really neat to hear awesome. Because yeah, I think like our name brand is really getting out there and our reputation is very strong. So yeah, definitely warms my heart to hear that when I hear that.
I'm curious, do you ever envision yourselves maybe putting on, something like a trade show? I know that you've got sort of these local chapters, but would you ever kind of want to get to that point?
Yes. So I personally don't. I am not the event planner, and I like to attend the events. I don't like to plan them, but my co-founder, Natalie, she is our events guru, and she's so good at them. And she has definitely talked about wanting to do something like this. And we do have a goal to do some kind of summit, so to speak, and maybe it's just a day-long summit in 2025. So more to come on that. And, if that goes well, then I could see us doing something longer, maybe a few-day show, conference, so to speak, moving forward. But yes, definitely on the radar.
Any other growth plans that you want to give voice to at the moment?
Sure. So we are in talks with a couple of different partners to expand on this idea of like either a recruiter marketplace or jobs marketplace to incorporate into the community. And again, it's this idea of like connecting the employers who need to find people with the recruiters who are looking for work. And so, that's a big initiative of ours, is to find, a really good solution for that. oh my gosh, we have like a million and one other ideas, but that's the thing I think we're working on hardest right now to really find the right solution for.
That's pretty cool. I want to go switch gears a little bit and talk about how you first got involved in the talent acquisition industry. What drew you to it? How did the door open for you?
Sure. So stems back to childhood. My mom had always told me, if you find something you love to do, you're never going to work a day in your life. So that's kind of the story that, you know, I grew up with, which I loved. And I'm very grateful that she instilled that in me. So moving forward to to college, as everyone who goes to college does, like, what am I going to do with my life when I'm done here? I knew I wanted to give back. I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't really know what that looked like. So in that process, I went to the career center at my own college and ended up developing this really lovely relationship with one of the career counselors there, who I still am in touch with and I just adore. And through that process, you know, she was like, okay, there's like the nonprofit route. There's like, you could be a social worker, and it really had me going through the process of like speaking with people in these industries or doing internships. I did a couple of nonprofit internships in college. And really through that process, I was kind of checking those boxes as like, okay, I know I don't want those things. And so I still had this idea that I wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. One day, it just dawned on me, like, I would love to do what she does. Like, it's what I've enjoyed this relationship that we've built so much, and she's helped me so much that I would love to be able to do that with college students. So I asked her, how did you get to where you are? She said, I went and got my master's, and it was a counseling degree in career development. So I said, oh my gosh, that's what I'm going to do. So that's exactly what I did. Luckily, the college I was at in San Diego actually offered that exact degree. And I think there's only 2 programs in the entire US that did.
Really?
So I stayed there. Yeah. There was, I think Boston College was another one at the time, and then University of San Diego. So I took a little time off in between, but went back to school there for my master's. So through the same idea happened in grad school, where I did a few internships in career centers, and I realized it just was not the right environment for me. I loved helping the students and I loved the one-on-one with them, but the university setting was not right for me. It was just too slow, too like antiquated, like very bureaucratic, and I found myself bored, right? So I knew coming out of my my master's degree that I wanted to get into corporate, and recruiting was a clear, path for that. So moved up to the Bay Area. My dream job was to be at Google doing like university recruiting for them, because then I would still get to recruit college students, and I could work for an amazing company, in Google or something like that. So fast forward, it's 2008. I moved to San Francisco. I had no idea that there was like a huge economic bust at the time. They don't tell you those things in a counseling program in grad school. So I move up here. There's no jobs to be found. And I just was in this moment of desperation, like meeting anyone I could. I did a million reach outs on LinkedIn. And in those days, LinkedIn wasn't even big, but reaching out to any recruiter that would give me the time of day and doing informational interviews and just, really trying to network as best as I could. And through that process, I had gone through a recruiting agency to try to find a job. And one of the 3 agencies that I went to, I really enjoyed. I got along with my recruiter. We had a great relationship. She was so just personable and empathetic and really helpful to me, helping me redo my resume and all of these other things. So I had a good feeling about that agency. But I did not want to work at a staffing agency. I was like, I'm not a salesy person. I've heard these horror stories about agencies that it's like cutthroat and, just really salesy and all of these things. I'm like, that's not me. Fast forward 3 months later, I'm running out of money. I'm still just no jobs to be found. And I was at a networking event and somebody said, oh, I think Premier's hiring, which is where I ended up. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to reach out to my recruiter and just see. And she said, well, yeah, we are hiring, but I thought you didn't want to work in agency. And I said, well, I had a great experience at your agency, so let's try it, right? Went through the process, ended up getting the job, and I was there for 13 years. It was like the best fit.
Wow.
I still don't consider myself this big salesperson, but realized through that process, because I landed at a really good agency, that it was more about the relationships than like a hard set sell. And some agencies are like that, right? That there's a reason recruiting gets a bad rap sometimes. But I was very fortunate to land somewhere that didn't take that approach to recruiting. So grew from there, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and you grew the company, or you helped to grow the company pretty significantly while you were there. What was in the intro? We said they were named. What was the award that they got? One of America's best recruiting firms.
Yep, and we had a few different awards. Fastest growing in the U.S. So we did go through a period of very, very high growth. I would say, like, coming out of the 2008-9 recession, the first few years were like so tough. I mean, it was just cold calling like no other. And then about like 2010, 2011, it really started to pick up. And so we saw very high growth from like 2011 to, I want to say, like 2016, 2017, something like that. And so I feel like it was like a little bit of right time, right place. I started in a down market. So like I knew what it was to work really hard and like fight tooth and nail for business. And I kept that work ethic up through the upswing, right? Like it was like this huge snowball where now we had business coming in the door. We didn't have to work for it as hard. But I still really had that work ethic to gain new business and to really make sure we were doing well and providing white glove service for the clients and customers that we did have. So, so grew the business over those years. And then, and I was managing our highest performing team. So that was a really great honor. And then basically after having my first kid, I came in a non-recruiting role. So I came back on the operations side, the management side. We were opening new offices in several different locations. So then I got the business side, and I got to know and understand, how to open an office. I got to know and understand the P&L and, how to grow and gross margins and, net income and all the things. So my second half of my tenure there was on the business and operations side.
You mentioned that you managed the top performing team before you took maternity leave and then came back to run the business side of things. I'm curious, from your 13 years there, being able to see this, what do you think it was that separated the top performers from everybody else?
I'm gonna use a term that I think kind of gets thrown around a bit, but I really do think it made a difference on our team, which was psychological safety. And, I think Google has done studies about this, like the highest performing teams have psychological safety. And that was absolutely true with our team. Every single person we added to the team were A players. Like we just did not accept someone underperforming, for sure, but even just like an average performer. So we were kind of like fast to hire, fast to fire. So if someone wasn't getting it within a couple of months, we were like, you're out. Like, and we had a shared commission pool, which is very rare on the agency side. Usually it's like, that's why it gets a cutthroat, perception, is that oftentimes you're competing with your colleagues for the placement. But we had a shared commission pool, so we were all working hard together for the same goal. And we just hired really quality people who worked hard, were humble, and just super smart, and recruited really well. And I think all of those things combined.
So does the psychological safety it's innate to the person, or is it something that you're fostering because of the environment that you're building, like that shared commission pool?
I think definitely the shared commission pool helped. I also think, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I think my management style, rubbed off on the team, right? Like I'm a very supportive person and I support the person and I understand things happen outside of work. We also we would talk about our personal lives, right? Like we had relationships outside of work. So I really fostered that kind of environment where we were not only friends, not only colleagues, but also friends. But then I have a very high bar for performance and how we treat our clients. So I held everybody else to that bar.
There are different types of firms sort of under the staffing umbrella, right? You've got like temp agencies, where they're placing people that, may work for short periods of time. That's obviously not your focus or, the people in your membership group. And then, as I understand it, you're sort of more of a, what's the term? Like hire for placement, right? So they pay you a fee and you help to find somebody and you place them there.
Yeah. So the different models are, so contingency recruiting is when a company comes and says, here's a job we need. They don't pay anything up front. They only pay the agency if they end up placing someone. And that's the type of firm I worked for. I now, after having 15 years of experience, I think that model is absolute crap. Like, where else do you ask someone to work for free? You know what I mean? Like other professional services firms, except for real estate. Like real estate, I think is probably one of the only other industries where they work for free until, you deliver something, right? So there's plenty of contingent agencies out there. I think they oftentimes just work so hard, and then you do all of this work and then, the company hires a referral or goes with another agency or what have you. So that's what I did. There's also retained search, and those are typically executive search firms. And again, there's different payment models and fee structures, but typically the company hiring will pay a third of the fee up front, a third when the interviews start, and then a third at the placement. And then there's also, like we mentioned earlier, people that are out there being solo recruiters, and sometimes there's like a monthly retainer that they're working off of. I've done that recently where I will tell my client, I'm going to commit X number of hours to this search, and then they pay me upfront that month. And then we renew if the role hasn't been filled at the end of the month. There's hourly, so you could come in and just be, contracting with the company hourly. So there's a lot of different models out there. There's embedded recruiting, RPO models. So a lot of different models out there.
So you are still, with your partners, you're still offering your own talent acquisition and recruiting services. Talk about the approach that you and your team take.
Sure. Yeah. So I still recruit, and I absolutely love it. And I don't ever see myself not recruiting. For years, like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't recruiting. I was on the operations side. I was, growing the business, and I still knew in my head that I liked recruiting and that I was into the industry and I believed in it. But it wasn't until I left Premier and went in-house. I was head of people at a small startup. So I was recruiting again, where I really, my passion and love for recruiting was reinvigorated, I would say. So I knew then that, okay, I need to still stay connected with recruiting. I need to still be recruiting to keep that passion for it. So when I started Talent Collective, I still have the goal of, at least having one client that I'm recruiting for at any given time. So again, my model is I'll do a monthly retainer. That way I'm getting paid something upfront. And really my goal is to fill their job that first month, because then they'll keep, providing more opportunities for me to work on. And I've been very fortunate to work with companies that move quickly, and I have been able to hit that goal of filling their roles within a month. So I mostly recruit for non-technical positions. So anything, G&A, go to market, operations, finance, et cetera, sales, customer success. And yeah, again, it's a monthly retainer, and I provide very, very high level of service and, kind of like that white glove approach to my clients. But yeah, that's a little bit about what I do there.
Talk a little bit more about that, Krista. I'm curious to hear what kind of separates you from other folks in the space. Obviously, when somebody is going to hire for this kind of help, it's a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is a really important role to fill so that they can get the right team members in their company. And so they're probably shopping around before mm-hmm. they say, Krista's the right one. And when they make mm-hmm. that decision, why have they made that?
Mm-hmm. It's so funny because after leading and managing teams for so long, like there are people that just get recruiting and are good at it naturally. And then there's people that have to work really hard and really long hours, and it just doesn't come naturally. And so I think it's just a very natural fit for me. I actually, when I got back into recruiting, I had not recruited for 6 or 7 years. And so I was I had a little bit of insecurity, like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this again? And, how am I going to be? And just immediately got right back into it. And my most recent client that I have been with since October of last year, she just gave me, I think, the most meaningful and impactful praise. She's worked with a lot of recruiters over her years. She's CEO of a marketing firm. And she told me, she's like, you aren't just marginally better than all of the recruiters I've worked with, but you're like significantly better. And when I heard that, it just gave me so much confidence that like, okay, I love what I do, but I'm also really good at it. And I think part of that is great. I am fast, but I also have high customer service skills and high touch. So I can get my work done very quickly, and I'm good at picking top caliber candidates, building relationships with them so that they're committed and loyal to me throughout the process of placing them at the company. And I also if I believe in the company I'm recruiting for, which luckily I have with all of the companies I've recruited for, I can get people pumped, like the people that I recruit don't bail out of the process because they're lukewarm on the company. If that happens, somebody at the company made them lukewarm. It was not me. I get people super excited about the companies I'm working for.
So I'd like to better understand what the qualities, the personality traits are that make a great recruiter. Obviously, from what I'm hearing you talk about, you have to be really good at developing relationships with the people mm-hmm. that you're trying to recruit. This isn't, an hourly job at a fast food restaurant. Typically, this is, a more prominent position, and people mm-hmm. probably have a pretty good job already. And so you're trying to lure them out of a comfortable situation. So yeah, developing that rapport and getting them psyched up about this other company is probably a big deal. Would it be correct to say that it's also a lot about being able to judge somebody's personality pretty quickly to see, are they the right culture fit?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a whole hot topic out there right now in recruiting, and that has to do with the hard skills of a job and can someone actually perform the job versus the whole culture fit idea. And there's a lot of bias in that. And how do you mitigate that bias? And do companies care as much about culture fit anymore if they're all working remotely? So there's a lot of ins and outs of all of that. As a recruiter and someone who, again, I feel like I'm good at what I do, there's this term recruiter's intuition. And when you have it and you just know it, you just have this gut feeling about certain people. And every single time I've gone against my recruiter's intuition, it has blown up in my face. So I've really learned over the years to listen to that. And so I think that the best recruiters out there like know that gut feeling and listen to it. And it's hard to say what it is other than a gut feeling about people. So it is reading people's personalities for sure. But then also you have to know the company and like what kind of personality fit or culture fit. And there's also like culture add, like, are they adding to the culture, not just like fitting in, like, being another duplicate of someone that already works there. Right. But, yes, gut.
Listen to your gut. True across many industries. Yeah. Krista, I'm curious, in all your experience, what are some of the most common hiring mistakes that you see companies do?
Ooh, this is a good one. I'm going to say moving too slowly. So there are companies that are so afraid to make the wrong hire that they make their interview process like 8 steps long or 10 steps long. And they make the candidates go through the ringer, right? Like they want them to do all of these different assessments or homework projects or, other things of that nature. And I think to some extent, those can have a time and a place. But if you make the process too long, I think it strings the process out much longer than it needs to be. It takes a lot of bandwidth from your internal employees and time of theirs to be interviewing so many candidates and at such a long pace. And candidates, like they go fast, right? If another company's has a quicker process, you're going to lose them. And I've had that happen so many times throughout the years that companies just move too slowly. And I think that that's a huge, like red flag, even for me, as I'm working with a new company, if their interview process is too long, I really advise against it.
I haven't obviously hired at the scale that you have before, but for my own companies in the past, I have developed my own kind of recruiting and vetting process. And, I made the mistake with, some of my earlier hires of doing exactly what you're describing, making that upfront process too difficult. And then, was wondering, why am I not getting sort of more people in the funnel for this? And so when I took a step back and I recognized, okay, I need to make this simpler, but I still wanted to include some kind of a test task to be able to gauge the quality and their output, the work that they were submitting. And I realized that earlier on I had made the mistake of asking too much, and I wasn't paying them for that effort that they were putting in.
Yep.
And so I made the decision, let's whittle down our list to, some people that look good, sound good, come across well, and then let's pay them for a simple test task. Yes. So it doesn't come across as too much effort, or we're trying to take advantage of them, or, we're going to take this free work that they did and use it. Is that track with kind of what you like to see happen?
Absolutely, like 1000%. And you hear that a lot from candidates that the company might give them a true real world problem that this role is going to be trying to fix. And then the candidate will do the work, and then the company just basically steals that work. So I think one, it's important to make it close enough where you're going to be able to evaluate the performance of the person and the output, but not so real world that the candidate's going to feel like you're just going to steal their work and bail. But to your point, if it is going to require, I think, more than, even an hour's time of theirs to prepare, I think paying them is a really, really smart way to go. And that sends an immediate message to the candidate that this company values me and isn't going to take advantage of me as an employee, right? Like everyone, they're assessing you as much as you're assessing them. So sending that message early on in the process, I think is huge and critical, and builds trust, right? Like they're going to trust you that much more if they do become your employee, if you're valuing them at an early stage in the process.
I'm curious, Krista, if you had to narrow it down to one thing, and obviously it's not ever one thing, but what is the most powerful thing that makes someone want to move jobs? Do they buy into the mission? Is it more pay? Is it the benefits? Like, or maybe even sort of like give us an ordered list of the things that are sort of the biggest triggers for them.
Yeah. So there's this saying, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. So I think management and leadership are huge. And even if you work for a company that you believe in, there's a product you believe in, company culture at large is positive and you enjoy it there and you feel well paid. If you and your manager don't align or you're not treated well by your manager, that's like living hell every day, right? For the person. So definitely at the top of the list. Like I would say like top 3 or 4 are going to be the manager relationship. So like a toxic manager. Definitely people are still interested in working for a company where, you know, they believe in the mission or believe in the product. So, you know, some kind of draw there. Culture is still a top one, and then pay. I think that for a few years, there was this whole thing about like, oh, pay's not important. Pay's not important. Of course it is. Like it absolutely is. And in all the surveys I see, it's usually in the top 3. So pay, benefits, like the larger package is really important to people. What other perks and benefits, health insurance, et cetera, are being offered above and beyond just the salary.
Krista, I'd like to shift gears again, and this time would like to ask about maybe a particular challenge, either personally or professionally, that you have had to overcome in the past, and some lessons that you learned coming out the other side.
I'll go personal on this one. I was going to go with something professional, but I'll go personal. So when I was in high school, I learned that my dad had a mental illness. He's high functioning, always had a stable job, but he definitely, I mean, I knew this as a kid, like he had his quirks and there were things about him that I wasn't seeing in other parents. And my experience was very different having a dad like him than I think a lot of my friends. And so we don't still to this day really know what it was because he never went and got diagnosed, but it was either schizophrenia or bipolar. But basically discovered that he had my mom tell me because he didn't like to talk about it and didn't want to talk about it. And so after my mom told me that, it really, just opened my eyes to why my relationship with my dad was so different than I saw other people's relationships and why he had those quirks and whatnot. And so I think one, just growing up, and I know nobody's like family situation is perfect. And I know people have so many different challenges growing up and with their parents, and they really vary quite broadly. And so this was mine, right? So I think just moving forward, you know, having a dad that loved me, but also couldn't support me in ways that I wanted to be supported or loved. So that was very challenging. And I think moving forward, he would open up every now and again as, you know, I was a young adult and even, you know, into my 30s. And he a couple of times had opened up and said, you know, you and your sister are really the only reasons that I'm alive. Like wow. He had lived such a horrific life with these demons, whatever they were, voices in his head, you know, there's a lot of paranoia and whatnot. He lived just such a horrible life that I think he would have taken his life had, you know, he not loved me and my sister that much. And so when I tell people that, a lot of people will say like, wow, that must have been like a really heavy burden for you, you know, as someone who was in high school at the time, to think like, I'm the only reason my dad's alive. I didn't see it that way. I actually saw it as my dad values me that much. I must be important, right? And so I think like a lot of women devalue themselves or, don't have confidence and don't think they're important. And I'm sure men as well. But I really chose to take those comments in a different direction to, rather than have it be this huge pressure on myself that I don't know. So anyways, I took it in a positive direction. I think that's just really how I live my life is, you can see things that are happening to you and wonder why they're happening to you, or you can wonder why they're happening for you. And I've always lived my life as why is this happening for me? And I think that's an example of that it was a gift that I received from my dad to know that, and really was able to have confidence in a lot of the rest of my life and know that I was important.
Thank you for sharing that, Krista. It's obviously, I'm sorry that your father, had those struggles, but what a beautiful way that you took his message. Right. We've got choices in how we sort of receive things. We can't control everything that happens in our lives, but we can control the way that we react to them. And you chose to take it in the most beautiful way possible that, wow, I am so special. I matter that much to my dad that's enough for him to stay around and to be here with us.
Yep.
That's a beautiful story.
Exactly. Thanks.
Krista, I have one more question I want to ask you, but before I do, I want to do a couple of things. First of all, if you're listening today and you like today's content, please hit the subscribe, like, or share button on your favorite podcast app. I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with you. Maybe they're interested in becoming a member. Maybe they're interested in becoming a client. Maybe they just want to have a general conversation. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So email is a really easy way. It's Krista with a K, Krista at talentcollectiveco.com. Also LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. My full name is there. So Krista Scarborough Tan. You can also look up Talent Collective and find me through the people tab on that.
Great. Now, last question I have for you. You went through, I'll call it the dark winter of, 2008, 2009. And it sounds like there's maybe not quite as bad now, but certainly the lots of struggles in the industry. Where do you see things going in the next 5 years in this talent acquisition space? What do you think the big changes are that are coming?
Yeah, I think there is going to remain some consolidation, and we're not going to go back to 2021 was top of the market for recruiters. Companies just could not, just like software engineers, could not hire enough recruiters. I don't think it's ever going to go back to that, so competitive, because we do have technology advancements and people able to do more with less. But I think because of those technology advancements and AI, I think we're going to get back to the more personal touch of recruiting. I think recruiting has gotten a pretty bad rap in the last few years, that recruiters don't get back to you. There's no closing of the loop, or there's no personal touch in the recruiting process. And I think we're going to actually go back to that, because people are realizing that's what's needed in order to be a good recruiter, and for people to want to remain in relationship with you. So I think there's kind of a little bit of a paradox there, right? With more technology, I think people are actually going to go back to having more of a personal touch.
That's terrific. Krista, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Anthony. Thank you for having me on. This was really fun, and thanks for the honor of being here today, and excited to connect with your audience.
My pleasure. I would say our pleasure. Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.